She didn't even look up when she sent it. Just 3 lines of pixelated arrogance, typed mid-flight somewhere over Colorado. I need 1 week to think if you're worth keeping. No conversation, no context. Just a message that cracked something inside me clean in half. 7 years of marriage reduced to a one-sided ultimatum from 30,000 feet. I sat in my office, the city pulsing beneath me, staring at that text like it had been handed down from a god I didn't believe in anymore. She was supposed to land in 2 hours. She thought she had 7 days. But what she didn't know was, I only needed 1. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. She didn't even look up when she sent it. Just 3 lines of pixelated arrogance, typed mid-flight somewhere over Colorado. I need 1 week to think if you're worth keeping. No conversation, no context. Just a message that cracked something inside me clean in half. 7 years of marriage reduced to a one-sided ultimatum from 30,000 feet. I sat in my office, the city pulsing beneath me, staring at that text like it had been handed down from a god I didn't believe in anymore. She was supposed to land in 2 hours. She thought she had 7 days. But what she didn't know was, I only needed 1. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink, because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. The jet hadn't even landed when I initiated the first transfer. By the time Isolde Wynne Pierce walked through the glass security doors at JFK's private terminal, my attorneys had already frozen access to the corporate cards, revoked biometric privileges at the penthouse, and flagged our joint accounts for suspicious activity. Because by then, they were. Her betrayal wasn't a guess anymore. It was traceable. Digital, dated and time-stamped like a receipt for broken vows. She texted me again from the back of her car service. Landed. We'll talk later. Please don't be dramatic. I didn't reply. She was expecting a confrontation, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a scene. I'd spent the last 72 hours doing what she thought I never would, collecting data, consolidating power, and contacting my legal counsel, Kieran Wells. While she was supposedly on a medical retreat in Sedona, I was confirming that Luca Barone, her so-called private fitness therapist, was billing us under a corporate shell funded by donations to the Wynne Pierce Foundation. The timing wasn't accidental. She'd chosen the week of my quarterly investor summit, assuming I'd be too distracted to notice. She had no idea how meticulous I could be when pushed. By the time she entered the penthouse, the staff had been prepped. The housekeeper greeted her with polite distance. The nanny had taken Jonah and Sage to my parents' lake house in Westchester to give Mommy some space. The silence hit her harder than I ever could. From the security feed, I watched her stand in the foyer for a full minute, phone in hand, waiting for something. Me, probably. Then she tried accessing the smart panel to adjust the temperature. Denied. She looked up, confused, and called out my name. I didn't answer. I was across the street at the Park Hyatt, sitting in the bar's corner booth with Kieran, a tablet in front of me. A scroll of expenses stretched down the screen. Luca's airfare, spa charges labeled as nutrition therapy, Even 2 matching Rolexes listed as mental health incentives. Every charge routed through Barova Wellness LLC. She's not even trying to hide it anymore, Kieran muttered, swiping through the evidence. This isn't just infidelity. It's financial manipulation. Potential embezzlement, if we tie it to the foundation funds. I nodded, jaw tight. I don't want to bury her. I just want her out of my way. You will, he said. But do it right. No rash moves. Build the case. Win quietly. I looked out the window, up at our home, my home. Every steel beam and Italian marble tile was paid for by the empire I built. The legacy I maintained while Isolde choreographed her social persona across fundraisers and photo ops. She believed appearance was everything, but she forgot who funded the facade. Back inside the penthouse, I returned just before midnight. She was sitting on the velvet sofa, barefoot, a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't look guilty. She looked irritated. You've made your point, she said flatly. No, I said, setting my keys down slowly. Not yet. She straightened slightly. We need to talk. I was serious about the week. I meant it. You sent a text, I said, walking to the bar and pouring myself a whiskey. Like a rental agreement. Like I was on some kind of trial period. I needed space, she snapped. Time to think. You needed time to pack his gym bag, I said calmly, and her face froze. She swallowed. Don't twist this. Twist? I laughed once, low. You invited him into our home, our gym. You used our money. And now, you want a week? She stood. I said I needed a week to think if this is worth fixing. I stepped toward her. Isolde, while you were deciding if I'm worth keeping, I was deciding how to end this without ruining you. She blinked, for once unsure. You wouldn't. I would, I said, and I am. Her hands shook slightly as she set the glass down. So that's it. You're done? No, I replied. You are. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she thought I'd grovel. Maybe she thought I'd beg. But I wasn't the one who needed validation. You want 7 days? I said, moving toward the hallway. Fine. But so do I. For what? I paused at the bedroom door. To let you see how much of your life was borrowed from mine. The next morning, I watched from the balcony as her Uber account failed to process. Her Amex declined at her boutique nail bar. Her concierge booking line didn't recognize her login. It took her a full hour to realize that nothing in her lifestyle functioned without my signature behind it. She called. I declined. She texted, "What is this, punishment?" No, this was perspective. By noon, she had looped in her mother, Althea, who emailed me directly. This is beneath you, Grayson. Please be reasonable. I didn't reply to her either. I didn't need to justify myself to anyone anymore. I had spent 7 years giving Isolde a world she didn't have the tools to maintain on her own. Now, for the first time, she'd have to decide if she could survive without me. I knew the answer. I just wanted to let her find out for herself. That night, as she paced the penthouse with no access to anything but her own reflection, I sat in my office, filing final instructions with Kieran. The trust accounts had been realigned. The forensic accountant had started flagging foundation transactions. My team was building a digital dossier on Luca, quietly compiling every breadcrumb they'd ever left behind. She gave me 7 days. But by then, I had already built the exit. All I had to do now was wait. By the second day, the panic began to show. Subtle, restrained, but unmistakable. Isolde's calls had shifted from condescension to confusion, and now, finally, to pleading silence. She hadn't heard from me since the night I told her she failed her own test. What she didn't realize was that I hadn't just emotionally withdrawn, I'd engineered her logistical exile. The concierge at her favorite salon didn't return her call. Her personal shopper at Bergdorf politely informed her that all services were suspended until her standing account was cleared. Even her reserved Peloton class had been reassigned. Every luxury she used to define herself had one thing in common. It ran on my credit and my discretion. She had neither now. What she did have, however, was time. 7 days, to be exact. And I intended to make sure every single one was calibrated, not in revenge, but in revelation. While she wandered through the penthouse calling friends who'd suddenly become too busy to respond, I was 10 blocks downtown in a private meeting room at Cortlandt Wells. The room was cold, windowless, quiet, exactly what I needed. Kieran entered carrying a stack of printouts and a USB drive. "You were right," he said, sliding the first sheet across the table. "Barova Wellness isn't just a shell, it's a funnel. It links directly to a registered nonprofit in Nevada, which conveniently lists Luca Barone as its medical consultant. Want to guess who signed the incorporation paperwork?" I took one look. Isolde. Kieran nodded. "Luca's never drawn a salary on record. Everything comes in the form of reimbursements, client engagement costs, nutrition supplements, travel billed as mental health excursions. It's all itemized. Some of the charges are split between foundation funds and personal withdrawals." I exhaled slowly, which makes it not just infidelity, but fraud. "And misappropriation of charitable assets," Kieran added. "We already flagged this to the auditors, quietly. This wasn't about destroying her. Not yet. This was about understanding the exact shape of the empire she built behind my back. An empire, I now realized, that I had unknowingly bankrolled. There was a certain bitter satisfaction in seeing the paperwork, in realizing she hadn't even tried to cover her tracks. And she thought her charm would shield her, that no one would ever think to dig. But I had all the time in the world now. She made sure of that when she handed me my own expiration notice. Kieran tapped the next file. "This is the nanny log, cross-referenced with building entry records and Jonah's school pickups. Luca spent the night at your home 5 times while you were out of state this year. Once, while the children were there." My throat tightened. Jonah mentioned someone was in the gym late at night. He said, "Mommy's friend with tattoos." I didn't respond. Kieran continued gently, "We'll handle that one discreetly, but it will go in the custody file. Judges don't love mystery men around minors, especially when foundation funds are involved." I nodded. "Document it. No leak. Just timestamp everything." He slid a sleek black folder toward me. "This is your weapon, Grayson. We don't use it unless she escalates." "I don't want escalation," I said. "I want clarity." Kieran offered a wry smile. "Then let her keep spiraling. You're already ahead." When I returned to the penthouse that evening, I entered quietly, with deliberate ease. Isolde was in the kitchen, rummaging through drawers. She turned, startled. Her face was bare, no makeup, no defense. "We need to talk," she said, voice thinner than usual. "We're doing exactly that," I replied, brushing past her. "You froze the cards." "I adjusted access," I corrected. "Temporarily." She scoffed. "Is that what this is now? A financial hostage situation?" I set my briefcase down and poured a glass of water. "This is a reflection of your choices. You wanted space. I'm giving you reality. You're punishing me." "I'm observing," I said. "You asked for a week to decide if I'm worth keeping, so I'm giving you full visibility into what that actually means." She blinked. I continued. "Do you know what it takes to run this life? The auto-scheduling? The managed assistance? The quarterly tax shielding. You don't see any of it because it's all invisible until it stops working." She folded her arms. "You think because you earn the money, you hold all the power." I laughed, Not bitterly, cleanly. No, Isolde. I hold the power because I never underestimated the cost of holding it. She flinched, and for the first time, she didn't reply. The next morning, she made an appointment with her mother's attorney. I knew because the call was logged through our shared telecom provider. She still hadn't changed her digital footprint. She assumed I was too consumed by emotion to keep monitoring. But emotion had nothing to do with this anymore. It was calculus. While she tried to position herself for leverage, I went further underground. Kieran and I met again in a private townhouse library owned by a former client who owed me a favor. The security was tighter, and the records kept strictly off-grid. We've also pulled her Instagram DMs, Kieran said, passing me a printed packet. Here, this one's useful. I read, if he makes a fuss, I'll cry on camera. He won't risk the board seeing me as the victim. It was dated 2 days before she sent the 1 week text. Another one from Luca. Keep him disoriented. If he retreats, we step in with a narrative. They weren't just cheating. They were scripting. I closed the packet. How much more do we need? Nothing, Kieran replied. You've got a full chessboard. Only question now is when to move. I'm not moving yet, I said. She thinks this is an intermission. Let her sweat in it. That evening, I returned home late. Isolde was curled up on the chaise in a silk robe. A glass of red wine balanced on her thigh. The bottle was unopened when I left. Now it was half gone. You missed dinner, she said quietly. I didn't know I was invited. She bit her lip. Look, I'm trying. To do what? To figure out if we can still be saved. I turned slowly. Isolde, the moment you put me on probation, you walked away from partnership. She sat up straighter. I panicked. I needed time. It doesn't mean I don't love you. Love doesn't send ultimatums, I said. It sends questions. It invites vulnerability. You sent a verdict. She looked at me then, not as a husband or a bank or a brand extension, but as a threat. And I saw something shift in her posture. Are you planning to ruin me? She asked softly. No, I replied. You already handled that. She blinked again, but this time there was something behind it. Fear, not of punishment, of irrelevance. And I knew she felt it. For the first time since she'd sent that message, she wasn't in control of the temperature of the room. I left her there, didn't sleep in the master, didn't speak another word. I had nothing left to argue. The next day, I met with the board of the Pierce Foundation. Privately, quietly. I showed them just enough. Travel receipts, overlapping charges, branded goods sent to Luca's apartment. No names, just timelines. They listened, took notes. One leaned over and whispered, "We've seen this coming." I nodded. I want to protect the mission, not the optics. You'll need to formally separate her role, another added. We'll ask her to resign in 2 weeks. Quietly. But it's done. Isolde wouldn't know yet, but the ladder was already collapsing under her. I walked home through the streets of Manhattan that night, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not joy, not triumph. Just the solid, centered knowing that everything she thought she controlled had already slipped through her fingers. When I entered the penthouse, she was on the balcony, looking out over the city with a blanket wrapped around her. "Do you remember our first night here?" she asked without turning. "Yes. I thought we were gods." I walked past her toward the door. "No, you thought you were above gravity." She didn't stop me, didn't say another word, and I realized then this was no longer a negotiation. It was an audit. The gym smelled like betrayal. It was just past 6 in the morning, and I stood in the basement-level private fitness center of our building, the same one I'd installed for Isolde 2 years ago when she insisted the city's equinox was too crowded. The rubber floors gleamed, untouched. The scent of eucalyptus still lingered from the automated humidifier. But what struck me hardest wasn't the silence. It was the ghost of what had happened here while I was away building the very life she tried to fracture. I walked over to the digital check-in console, keyed in the override code, scanned the system logs. Luca Barone logged in 3 times last quarter under a staff pass. My staff pass. He hadn't even tried to cover his digital tracks. He used my name to access my home, my gym, my life. That pass was supposed to be reserved for Karen, or our nanny, or the building's maintenance lead. But Luca, he had been granted entrance into my sanctum. Through her. My fingers tightened on the edge of the touchscreen. I tapped deeper. Timestamps. 2 of the check-ins were after midnight. One of them coincided with the week Jonah had stayed home with a sore throat, and Isolde had refused to let me reschedule my trip to Los Angeles. He had been here while my son was asleep 1 floor above. I didn't realize how hard I was breathing until my watch buzzed with a heart rate alert. I backed away, slow, steady. Kiran had said to stay measured, let her keep spiraling. But there was no longer a spiral. There was a pattern, and it was deliberate. And now it was time for me to be deliberate, too. The boardroom at Pierce Private Capital was polished to perfection, walnut-paneled, gleaming in that sterile, controlled way reserved for institutions that never dealt in accidents. I entered just before noon, greeted with respectful nods and the calm familiarity I'd cultivated over a decade of built trust. 12 people sat at that table. Every one of them had benefited from my judgment, my composure, my ability to see 6 moves ahead. Today, I needed that skill more than ever. Karen was already seated, tablet in front of him. I've reviewed the transition draft, I said calmly. We'll need to accelerate the leadership shuffle for the Foundation's Oversight Council. Isolde will step down quietly within 10 days. There was a silence, followed by a cough. One of the board members, Lorenz, leaned forward. Grayson, is this personal? I met his eyes directly. No, it's necessary. He nodded once. Another woman across the table raised her brow. You're removing her name from the trust documents? She'll retain her post-nuptial distribution rights, I replied, but she will no longer serve in any representative capacity, nor claim influence over the fund's mission. That's not punitive. It's preventative. More nods. A few exchanged glances. None of them objected. Kiran added, We have compiled a dossier of financial inconsistencies. Nothing illegal, but enough to suggest mismanagement that could affect donor confidence. Our responsibility is transparency. There it was. The word Isolde hated most. Not image, not influence. Transparency. Because in her world, appearances were currency, and she was suddenly bankrupt. Any concerns? I asked. No one spoke. And that silence? That was the moment I knew she was already obsolete in the rooms that had once clapped for her. That evening, Jonah asked if Luca was still Mommy's helper. The question came with the brutal innocence only a child could wield. We were eating Thai takeout on the couch, just the 2 of us, Sage already asleep. I paused. Why do you ask? He had Mommy's bracelet, Jonah said. The gold one. The one you got her for Christmas. My throat went dry. You saw him with it? He said he borrowed it for a costume party, but I thought only girls wore bracelets like that. I wanted to scream, to call Isolde, to demand an explanation, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded and said, That was probably a mistake, bud. It won't happen again. He nodded back, small, trusting, unaware of the war unfolding in the walls of his childhood. After he went to bed, I stood in the hallway between their rooms and realized something. I didn't hate Isolde for falling in love with someone else. I hated her for doing it in the house I built while my children slept one floor away. I hated her for thinking they wouldn't notice, for assuming kids were blind to betrayal just because they didn't have the words for it yet. That night, I lay awake listening to silence. Not hers. Mine. 3 days into the ultimatum, Isolde's mother showed up. Althea Wynne swept into the penthouse like a curated storm. Blazer, perfectly pressed, pearls in place, her signature scent lingering in every room she passed through. She didn't knock. She never did. The staff had once referred to her as the other resident. She found me in the study. "We need to talk," she said, folding her coat with surgical precision. "About?" She placed a leather folder on the desk. "About this grotesque melodrama you're staging." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the audit?" "I mean the humiliation," she hissed. "You've frozen her out, embarrassed her, removed her from her own lifestyle like she's a squatter in her own home." "She is." Althea's jaw tensed. "You're better than this." "I used to be," I said quietly, "when I thought I had a partner." "She's struggling, Grayson." "All women do when they lose themselves in a marriage like this. You gave her too much, too quickly. You overwhelmed her. Don't patronize me." She sighed. "Look, whatever she did, it's salvageable. There's a path back to dignity for both of you, but only if you stop now." I stood, walked around the desk. She brought a man into my home, into my children's space, and she paid for his silence with my name. Althea didn't blink. "She didn't think she'd get caught," I added. "She assumed you'd clean it up." Althea finally met my gaze. "And if I do? Then you're just as obsolete as she is." Her eyes narrowed. She reached into her bag, pulled out a single photograph. It was of Sage, 3 years old, asleep in Althea's lap during a charity gala. "This is what I care about," she said. "Those children, their legacy. Do you? More than you can imagine. Then protect them from scandal. Don't turn this into a public crucifixion." I stepped closer. "I'm not publicizing anything. I'm just turning off the lights and letting her navigate the dark." She held my stare for several seconds. Then, finally, she said, "She won't survive this." She was never built to. Althea nodded once, then turned on her heel and left. The door didn't slam. She never slammed doors, but I'd never heard her heels sound so heavy on the way out. That night, Isolde finally cracked. I returned from dinner with Kiran to find her sitting at the kitchen island, sobbing into a glass of water. "You win," she whispered. I dropped my keys. "This isn't about winning." "It is," she cried. "You planned this. You waited for me to mess up so you could tear it all down." "I didn't wait," I said. "You handed me the match and poured the gasoline." She looked up, mascara streaking. "He meant nothing." "Then why did you give him everything?" She couldn't answer. I sat across from her, not out of pity, but to look her in the eye as she unraveled. "You said you needed a week," I said. "Well, it's day 3, and I've already rebuilt the parts you tried to break." She swallowed. "What happens after day 7? "You'll see." She reached across the table, touched my hand. For a moment, I almost flinched, but I didn't move. I let her touch something that no longer belonged to her. Then I stood, took my hand back, and left her there, alone, not because I was cruel, but because she had made solitude the currency of this war, and I was finally rich in it. The Foundation released its formal statement at 9:07 a.m. The email was short, polished, sterile. It thanked Isolde Wynne Pierce for her service and announced a transition in leadership to strengthen long-term integrity and donor transparency. There was no fanfare, no gratitude-filled tribute, just a polite farewell, delivered in the same crisp tone you'd use to announce the closing of a parking garage. Within minutes, every major board member received a private briefing, and by 9:45 her foundation email was deactivated. The password reset attempt triggered an alert, which my team monitored. She tried 3 times before giving up. She didn't even call me, which told me she knew it was over. The timing was strategic. I made sure the announcement dropped on the same morning she'd scheduled her appointment at Eden Spire, the exclusive midtown spa that prided itself on absolute discretion. The receptionist greeted her with warmth, let her settle in, then politely asked her to provide an alternate form of payment. Her card declined. Again, she left without speaking, but I had eyes on everything. My security liaison had a man stationed discreetly in the lobby, watching, not to intimidate, just to confirm she was no longer who she thought she was in public. And it was working. Meanwhile, I was sitting across from Luca Barone. He hadn't expected to see me. Not in person. Definitely not this soon. We met at a neutral spot in Soho, a cafe known for catering to discreet professionals and even more discreet transactions. I arrived first, claimed a back booth, and waited precisely 7 minutes before he walked in. White t-shirt under a blazer, sunglasses pushed up like he was still auditioning for attention. "Grayson," he said, trying to play casual. "Wasn't expecting this." I didn't offer my hand. "Sit," I said. He did. I placed a manila envelope between us. "Let's be clear. This is not a negotiation. You're here because I'm giving you a window to walk out with your limbs intact." He laughed, a weak, performative chuckle. "I don't know what you think I've done." "Don't insult us both," I cut in. "You registered a fake company. You used it to bill for personal luxury services. You accessed my home, my family's space, under false pretenses, and you accepted gifts purchased with charitable funds. Do you want to keep going?" His lips parted, then closed. I opened the envelope and slid a few sheets forward. Copies of his reimbursement logs, social posts he thought were deleted but archived, and one photo of him shirtless on our terrace, time-stamped 3:12 a.m. "You didn't even try to hide," I said. He looked down. "What do you want?" "Disappearance," I replied. "No press, no lawyers, no contact with Isolde. You'll sign an NDA, surrender access to all accounts and devices paid for through Barova Wellness, and dissolve the LLC. I'll waive legal pursuit as long as you vanish." He scoffed. "And if I don't?" I leaned in. "Then I prosecute. I bury you in court filings, and I leak everything to every outlet from Manhattan to Milan. You won't be a trainer again. You'll be a cautionary tale." He looked at the pages again. "You've got 48 hours, I said. "After that, I don't stop." He didn't argue, just sat there, smaller than I remembered him being in the surveillance photos. Inflated ego, deflated consequence. I stood.
"Oh, and Luca, you were never the threat. You were just the prop." Then I left him there. Isolde called that afternoon. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She whispered, "You met with him," she said. "Yes. You threatened him. I offered him options. Why are you doing this?" I paused. "Because for the first time, I don't care about fixing your mess. I care about finishing it." She sniffed. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." "You meant for me to look the other way," I said. "That's not the same thing." Then I hung up. Jonah and Sage returned home on Friday afternoon. Their return was part of the plan, not to punish her, but to expose her, to let the kids be the mirror she couldn't escape. Isolde hadn't seen them in 4 days, not because I denied her, but because she never asked. She was too busy chasing control. When they walked through the front door, Sage ran to her mother, giggling. Jonah lingered, watching. "Hi, Mommy."
Sage said, hugging her legs. Isolde dropped to her knees, kissing her forehead. I missed you so much. Jonah didn't move. She turned. Come here, baby. He hesitated. Are you mad at Daddy? Isolde froze. No. Why would you say that? You said you needed time away because Daddy made you tired. I stepped in gently. Jonah, but Daddy does all the work, he said quietly. You just go places. The room fell completely silent. Isolde blinked. That's not true. He looked at her, that rare blend of childhood confusion and budding awareness that even adults find hard to sit with. You used to smile at him more, he said. Now you don't smile at all. She broke, just for a second. Her mouth trembled. Then she reached for him. He let her hug him. But he didn't hug her back, and I knew that was the wound she wouldn't recover from. The next day, Luca vanished. His social media went dark. The gym removed his listing from their staff page. My legal team confirmed the NDA had been signed and notarized. A Barova Wellness filed for dissolution. Just like that, the chapter closed. Isolde didn't mention it. She walked through the house as if nothing had changed. She still lit candles at dusk, still arranged her skincare on the marble counter, but her phone stayed silent, her inbox empty. Her world was shrinking. By Sunday, she asked to speak with me privately. We sat in the formal living room, opposite ends of a sectional too wide to bridge. I want to stay, she said. I said nothing. I want to try again, not just for the kids, for us. I studied her, not the words, the tone, the cracks in her composure, the tremor behind her insistence. Why now? I asked. She opened her mouth, closed it. Because the alternative is worse, I said. Because the image of losing this life is scarier than the truth that you already lost me. Her lip trembled. Grayson, I gave you everything, I said. Not just money, access, reputation, protection. I absorbed your mistakes, deflected questions, elevated your status, and you thought you could cut me out with a text. She looked away. It wasn't just a text. You're right, I said. It was a thesis, a declaration of independence from a kingdom you didn't build. She whispered, I'm sorry. I believe you, I replied. But I don't forgive you. She flinched. I stood. 1 week, Isolde. You gave me that. And now there are 2 days left. She didn't follow me when I walked out. She knew the balance was no longer hers to shift. That night, I watched Jonah sleeping, his tiny chest rising and falling under the soft glow of the moonlight peeking through the curtains. Sage stirred once, mumbled something about dinosaurs, then rolled over. I felt the weight of it then, not revenge, responsibility. My children needed peace. Structure. A life that didn't feel like an emotional landmine every time their parents entered the same room. I had been willing to fix things once. But now I was building something new, not with her. In spite of her. The 5th night was the breaking point. It came dressed in designer clothing and a carefully reapplied persona. But under the surface, Isolde was beginning to unravel. She had scheduled a dinner, just the 4 of us. Me, her, Jonah, and Sage. Her idea, her menu, her illusion of normalcy. She even lit the candlesticks she once claimed were too ceremonial for casual use. I sat at the table in silence, watching her force a smile as Sage made lopsided conversation about a picture book and Jonah jabbed at his salmon with the quiet fury of a child who knew more than he was supposed to. Jonah, she said too brightly, aren't you going to thank Mommy for your favorite dessert? He didn't look up. I like Daddy's better. She blinked, held her breath, then exhaled through her teeth. I set down my fork, wiped my mouth. "Thank you for the effort," I said, neutral.
"I'm trying," she replied, her voice tightening. I nodded. "I see that." We both knew this wasn't about effort. It was about optics. A final push for proof she could still play house, still wear the mask of domestic grace. But the kids weren't props anymore, and neither was I. After dinner, she asked to speak privately again. This time, in the atrium, beneath the chandelier she'd flown in from Milan 5 years ago. "You're not giving me a chance," she said. "You're letting your anger dictate everything." "I'm letting your decisions dictate everything," I said. "There's a difference." "I made mistakes." "No," I corrected. "You made a system, a strategy, and then you expected immunity." She pressed her hands together. "What do I have to do?" I looked around the room. Every piece of it had been curated to her taste, funded by my signature, and maintained by the image we projected together. But it was empty now, like a showroom, all lighting, no warmth. "You're going to attend the Harrington Gala," I said. She blinked. "What?" "You're going to walk in with me. You'll smile. You'll nod. You'll make it clear we are no longer a power couple, but two professionals parting with civility. No rumors, no tears, just grace." She studied me. "And then?" she asked. "Then we go home," I said. "And you sign." The Harrington Gala was the social equivalent of the Met Gala for finance and philanthropy, an event curated to showcase elite causes, elevated fashion, and strategic affiliations. Isolde had never missed it in 7 years. This year, she wore a black column dress with diamond cuffs and the same strained composure she'd used at our wedding reception when her mother criticized the champagne. We arrived separately but entered together. Flashbulbs flickered, whispers followed. I knew exactly how we looked. Distant, polished, professional. I offered her my arm, and she took it, the grip too firm, the smile too frozen. Inside, I played my role. I greeted the Duttons, nodded to the Altman twins, held a 3-minute conversation with the mayor's economic advisor about sustainable funding models, all while watching her try to swim through a crowd that once kissed her cheeks like royalty. Now, the kisses were air. The smiles, thinner. She tried to find her footing, laughed a little too hard at minor jokes, clung to the hands of women who'd already heard whispers. She wasn't the queen anymore. She was the wife whose husband had retracted his endorsement. And in this world, that was a death sentence. Near the bar, I caught Luca's former business partner, Alexei, leaning in with a smirk as he whispered something in Isolde's ear. Her face drained, then flushed. She turned away, eyes darting. She saw me watching, and I held her gaze. Not with pity, with clarity. We returned home in silence. The children were asleep. The staff dismissed. In the study, the agreement waited. 1 black folder, 1 gold pen, 1 hourglass on the desk, turned over exactly as she sat. "You had your week," I said. She looked at the folder like it contained a coffin. "I don't want a war," she whispered. "You don't have the soldiers." She opened the folder. Pages of clauses, asset distributions, co-parenting schedules, NDA terms. My legal team had drafted it with surgical precision, bulletproof, equitable, but merciless in its message. "You've locked me out of the trust. I've protected it from misuse. This home goes into sale escrow. You'll receive your share. I'm buying another residence." Her hand trembled as she flipped the page. "What about the board seats?" "Resigned, publicly, cleanly." "And Jonah and Sage?" "We co-parent. I retain primary residence status. You'll have a driver account and supervised visitation the first 6 months. Standard protocol."
She didn't argue, because every term had already been vetted. She tried one last time.
Grayson, we were something once. Yes, I said. Something I outgrew. She looked up. That was the real wound, not losing the money, the relevance. It was realizing I had surpassed her emotionally and mentally, and she didn't even see it coming. You're not who I thought you were, she said. I'm exactly who I've always been, I replied. You just stopped looking. She signed, and in that moment, I felt nothing. Not victory, not vengeance, just release. The next morning, I woke early, made pancakes for Jonah and Sage, packed their bags for the weekend getaway I'd promised them, just the three of us. Isolde wasn't in the house. She'd left before dawn, probably to lick her wounds in some penthouse hotel suite with overpriced espresso and silence thick enough to drown in. I didn't check. I didn't care. The children laughed that morning. Loud, genuine, messy laughter. And I realized something. I had been surviving my own life for years. Now, I was finally living it. Day 7 began with quiet. Not the tense, charged silence that had permeated the penthouse for days, but something softer. Finished, like a house exhaling after all its furniture has been cleared. The kids were with my father, spending the weekend at the lake house. I'd sent our driver to deliver them late the night before. They left sleepy but giggling, too young to know what emotional clean sweeping looked like, too wise not to feel it in the air. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. The carpet beneath my bare feet felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. Maybe it did. Maybe it always had. Isolde knocked once, then stepped in. No makeup, no designer armor, just a cotton robe and bare skin that looked more fragile than fierce. I know what today is, she said. I nodded. It's Sunday. It's the day you said I'd see. Yes. She walked to the armchair across from me, sat down. No defenses, no scripts. I don't know where to go, she whispered. That's not my problem to solve. She nodded. I know. We sat there for a moment, two people who once swore forever and now shared nothing but silence and split assets. I want to say something, she finally offered. I raised an eyebrow. You don't owe me your forgiveness, she said. I betrayed you. I betrayed our family. I don't expect you to excuse it. I remained still, but I need you to understand. It wasn't about you, I scoffed lightly. That's supposed to help? It wasn't judgment. It was emptiness, she continued. I got lost somewhere between being a wife, a socialite, a mother, a Wynne, a Pierce. I didn't know who I was if I wasn't being adored. And Luca, he saw me, or at least pretended to. I didn't flinch. You know what I find funny? She tilted her head slightly. You say it wasn't about me, but every step of your betrayal required using me, my name, my access, my trust. So whether or not it began as a rebellion, it ended as theft. She nodded, biting her bottom lip. You didn't just cheat, I said. You sold my silence. You offered my resources like they were disposable. You gambled with the only stability our kids had, all so you could feel seen. Tears welled in her eyes. You're right. I'm always right, I said, not to be cruel, but because it was simply true. And that's what terrified you most. She let the tears fall this time. No wiping them away, no performative trembling, just raw, unpolished grief. I thought I wanted a different life, she whispered, but I only wanted a different version of myself. You had a choice. I made the wrong one, and now it's made you. She looked up, eyes rimmed red. Do you hate me? No, I answered, but I'm indifferent now, and that's worse.
She crumbled at that, not because she didn't understand, but because she did. Isolde Wynne Pierce had once been the envy of Upper Manhattan, and now she was just a woman in a robe, facing the truth that even she couldn't spin this ending into something beautiful. She left around noon. One rolling suitcase, a black handbag, no entourage, no paparazzi-worthy departure, just a soft closing door and the faint sound of elevator hydraulics. I watched her go from the balcony, not to ensure she left, but to witness the final act. The credits rolling on a film I had once financed and starred in, and now refused to watch again. The doorman nodded to her politely. No fuss. She didn't look back. That evening, I met Kiran for dinner. He had booked a private table at the Monroe, our favorite spot before everything in my life turned into a game of survival and restraint. The lighting was low, the jazz soft, the space warm in that understated, expensive way New York rarely offers anymore. I saw the finalized filings, Kiran said, sliding a copy of the court's stamped approval across the table. I folded it closed. It's done. You good? I took a breath. I'm clean. He raised his glass. To clean breaks and better beginnings. We clinked. For a while we didn't speak, just ate, sipped, let the soft hum of piano and murmured conversations fill the space between our words. Finally, Kiran leaned in. You know you scared the hell out of all of us, right? I smirked. Why? Because I didn't fall apart? No, he said, because you didn't even flinch. You walked through it like a soldier, not because you're cold, but because you knew exactly who you were. She never had a chance. I nodded slowly. That's the difference between us. She needed to be adored. I needed to be respected. And now? Now, I just want peace. You've earned it. I looked around, really looked, for the first time in weeks. The wine was rich, the food perfect, the air undisturbed by drama or demands, and I realized I was finally free. It was the first Sunday in April that felt like spring. Central Park bloomed in layers of color, early tulips unfolding beside magnolia trees, children laughing as they darted past horse-drawn carriages, and the hum of slow-moving tourists. I stood near Bethesda Terrace watching Jonah race Sage up the wide stone steps, both of them breathless with joy. They didn't look back, not once, and I didn't call after them. They knew I was there, just a few paces behind, steady, calm, present. The way I had always been, even when the world tilted under our feet. Especially then. Jonah reached the top first and threw his arms in the air like a tiny conqueror. Sage collapsed in a pile of giggles beside him. I gave them a moment, then walked to the bench overlooking the fountain and sat down, a folded letter in my coat pocket. It was from Isolde, delivered through our attorney. No stamp, no return address. Just one sheet of thick, cream-colored paper with 3 lines scrawled in her handwriting. You were never the villain. I was just too weak to be the woman you built beside. I hope one day our children forgive me first. I didn't read it more than once. I didn't need to. Some truths, once spoken, no longer hold power. I reached into my pocket and unfolded the letter one last time. The ink was slightly smudged, maybe from tears or from rain, or from a hand that finally trembled after years of pretending not to. I stood, walked over to the fountain, and let the paper drift from my fingers into the water. It bobbed for a moment, then sank slowly, quietly, not with drama, with release. Behind me, Sage shrieked and sprinted after a pigeon. Jonah followed. Their laughter echoed beneath the archway, unburdened and wild. I took a breath, not of victory, of peace. A woman approached me then, a stranger, maybe late 30s, dressed in a blazer and sneakers, holding a folded copy of the Financial Times. You're Grayson Pierce, right? I turned, surprised. Yes? She smiled. I read the piece in last week's profile, The Quiet Exit. Brilliant. I smiled faintly. I didn't write it. No, she said. But you lived it. That kind of strength. It sticks with people. I nodded, unsure what else to offer. She tilted her head. Was it worth it? I thought about that for a moment. The answer didn't come easily, but when it did, it was whole. Yes, I said. Because sometimes the strongest move isn't staying. It's walking away before you disappear inside someone else's lie. She nodded. Good luck, Mr. Pierce. And then she was gone. That night, back at the new apartment, smaller, sleeker, sun-drenched in a way that felt honest, I tucked Sage into bed with her favorite stuffed dinosaur and checked Jonah's backpack for homework. He pulled out a crumpled permission slip. I forgot, he mumbled. It's for the field trip. I smoothed the paper and signed it. Will Mommy be there? He asked quietly. No, I said gently, but I will. He nodded, thoughtful. She says she's getting better. I paused. I hope she is. Do you believe her? I met his eyes, so much older than they should have been. I believe people can change, I said, but they have to want it more than they want to be forgiven. He nodded again, slower this time. Okay. He didn't need more, and I didn't need to say more. That's what healing looks like in a house that used to echo with suspicion and sharp-edged silence. Small conversations, honest ones, spoken without flinching. I sat in the living room after they went to bed, lights low, a book open in my lap. I wasn't reading. I thought about Isolde, about Luca, about the people who orbit pain because they've mistaken it for intimacy. And then I thought about myself. Not the man who had everything, or the man who lost everything, but the man who reclaimed everything he was never supposed to give away in the first place. Pride, presence, peace. I didn't win in the way people expect. The social media vindication, the Instagram-worthy glow-up, the watch me thrive aesthetic. I won in silence, in courtrooms, in custody agreements, in the echoes of children who no longer tiptoe around the moods of broken adults. I won in the absence of chaos, and in the decision to let go of someone I once built a life with so I could build a better one for the people who deserved it most. The next morning, I poured 2 bowls of cereal. Jonah asked if I could braid Sage's hair because she says I make it hurt. She made a face at him and giggled. I did my best. She didn't wince. And when we walked out the door, I didn't think about what had been lost. I thought about what I still had. Everything. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people we once let into our quietest moments, the ones we trusted to hold us when the world turned cold, the ones we loved despite the warning signs. And when that trust is broken, what remains isn't just pain. It's a silence that hums in the spaces they used to fill, a silence that asks, "Who are you, now that everything you were building together has turned to ash?" But here's the truth. No one tells you. There's power in the fall. There's clarity in being broken wide open. Because what we often mistake for the end is sometimes the clean slate we never gave ourselves permission to create. In this story, we've watched the destruction of something once beautiful, built on surface smiles and curated lives. We saw how a single betrayal can splinter the foundation of a home, how a love left unattended curdles into entitlement and distance. But we also witnessed something more profound: resilience. The resilience to stay calm in the storm, the strength to grieve without vengeance, the courage to walk away, not in rage, but in quiet conviction. Healing doesn't always look like celebration. Sometimes it's the silent reclaiming of identity, Sometimes it's choosing not to clap back, not to expose, not to retaliate, but to rise, privately, intentionally, fully. Some stories are not about revenge, they're about restoration. Not just of finances or reputations, but of self-worth, of peace, of knowing that when someone gives you an ultimatum, when they treat your loyalty like a leash, you don't have to beg, you don't have to plead, you don't have to perform worthiness, because the right people never ask you to audition for love. The right people see your value long before you've been forced to prove it. We often get trapped in cycles where our kindness is mistaken for weakness, where the more we give, the more others take. But at some point, the lesson arrives like a thunderclap. Boundaries are not punishments, they are a form of self-respect. And silence is not surrender, it's mastery. What happens when someone tells you they need time to decide if you're worth keeping? You let them have all the time they want. And while they hesitate, while they weigh your value like a stock, you rebuild, you rise. You remember that your worth was never up for negotiation. Because when you know who you are, when your integrity is intact, when your peace is priceless, you stop chasing people who treat your love like an option. You become the one they never recover from. And so, if you're listening to this and you've ever been handed an ultimatum by someone who never saw the full breadth of your love, your strength, your grace, know this: you were always the prize. You were always the fire. You were always enough. Some losses are wins in disguise. Some endings are invitations. And some exits are so quiet, so elegant, they echo forever in the hearts of those who underestimated you. This wasn't just a story of heartbreak. It was a story of triumph, of clarity, of emotional survival in a world obsessed with appearance. And now, as the credits roll on this chapter, may you carry this with you. You are allowed to outgrow what once felt like home. You are allowed to protect your peace at all costs. And you are allowed to say, without shame or fear, I am worth more. Thank you so much for joining us on this powerful journey. If this story moved you, sparked something inside you, or reminded you of your own resilience, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know how this resonated with you. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and follow the channel so you never miss another story filled with heart, strength, and unexpected truth. Until next time, stay grounded, stay bold, and remember, peace is the reward.